She thought leaving the country meant she could dodge $20,000 in unpaid rent and damages. She was wrong. I didn't just fine her. I made sure her name would haunt her every time someone typed it into Google for the rest of her life. When you rent out your home, you expect some level of wear and tear. A scuff on the wall, maybe a small appliance breaking. Life happens, but you also expect a basic level of respect. That's the mindset I had when I handed over the keys to my fully furnished Manhattan apartment. It wasn't just any apartment. This place was the crown jewel of my life's work. Hardwood floors polished to a mirror shine, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline like a living painting, a kitchen stocked with high-end appliances, right down to the sleek microwave I'd imported because it matched the decor. Every sofa cushion, every frame print on the wall. I'd chosen them personally. But then life pulled me in another direction. My mother's health took a sharp turn downhill. She was 87, living alone, and starting to forget things. Small things at first, then bigger. I knew she needed full-time care, so I bought a smaller house closer to her. The plan was simple. I'd rent out my Manhattan apartment, keep it furnished, and use the income as my main source of financial support while I focus on caring for Mom. That's when Jane Smith entered my life. She was a middle-aged woman from Queensland, Australia. She came with a polite accent, a calm demeanor, and a story that made her sound like the perfect tenant. She explained she had no landlord references because she'd owned her home for 30 years. On paper, she ticked every box. Financially stable, gainfully employed, letters of reference praising her as responsible, tidy, and respectful. The first time we met, she even complimented the furniture and told me she appreciated how warm and welcoming the place felt. I remember thinking, finally, someone who will treat this home the way I would. For 7 months, everything seemed fine. Rent payments arrived like clockwork. Our communication was minimal, but always polite. I never suspected anything was about to go horribly wrong. The silence begins. Month 8 came and the rent didn't. I figured it was a bank delay. I sent her a quick email. Hey Jane, just checking in. Rent didn't come through this month. Could be nothing, but let me know. No reply. A few days later, I tried again. Still nothing. By the end of the month, my tone had changed. Jane, rent is now 30 days late. Please respond so we can sort this out before it escalates. Silence. The second month passed. Still no rent, no contact. I called, left voicemails, sent certified letters. She ignored everything. The legal path. I had no choice but to file in housing court. The process was slow and frustrating, but I showed up to every hearing. She didn't show up to a single one. The judge eventually ruled in my favor, granting an eviction order. But Jane was one step ahead. Before the marshal could even knock on the door, she disappeared, packed up and left without a word. When I finally unlocked the apartment, I was not prepared for what I found. The aftermath. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Not just messy apartment smell. This was a stale, rotting stench that clung to my clothes. The sofas I kept spotless, stained with substances I couldn't even identify. The imported microwave, smashed, its door dangling by a single hinge. Rotten food filled the fridge, growing mold colonies that looked like they belonged in a science lab. Dust coated every shelf, and the bathroom looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. This wasn't negligence, it felt intentional, like she wanted to leave her mark in the worst possible way. I took photos of everything. Wide shots, close-ups, time-stamped images of the damage. I knew I'd need them. I took her to small claims court for the damage, and once again, I won. Between the unpaid rent and repairs, the total judgment against her was just over $23,000. The problem, winning in court is one thing. Collecting from someone who's moved halfway around the world is another. Jane was back in Australia, and to enforce a judgment there, I'd have to hire lawyers overseas. The process could cost more than what she owed, and even then, there was no guarantee I'd recover a cent. She thought she'd escaped, that she could walk away laughing while I ate the loss. For a few weeks, I'll admit, I felt defeated. I had done everything by the book and still lost. The spark. One night, I was scrolling through my emails Rereading the old reference letters Jane had sent me when she applied. Out of curiosity, I typed her name into Google. That's when I noticed something. Jane's name wasn't common at all. In fact, every single search result was clearly about her. And then it hit me like lightning. I could make sure no one ever Googled her name without seeing the truth. I checked the domain registry. To my shock, herexactname.com was available. I bought on the spot. The website. I spent weeks building the site. This wasn't some sloppy rant. It was a professional-grade dossier. The homepage featured scans of the court judgments with official seals, photos of the apartment damage, side by side with before shots from my original listing, the eviction notice from the marshal taped to her door, timeline of events backed by receipts, emails, and certified letters. Every word was factual. No insults, no name-calling, just cold, hard evidence. I also included publicly available details. Her job title, the club membership she bragged about, even her volunteer work. All verifiable, all legal to publish. SEO revenge. This part was almost fun. I optimized every inch of that site for her name. Meta tags, keywords, backlinks. I made sure Google had no choice but to put my site at the top. It worked. Within weeks, my site became the #1 search result for her name. Then I started watching the analytics. One day, a hit came from the IP address of her employer. A week later, more hits from what looked like conference centers and hotels. People were Googling her. People were reading my site. The ripple effect. I decided to go a step further. I contacted the people who'd written her glowing references. I sent them the link, along with the court documents. Some were shocked. Some didn't respond. But I knew word was spreading. I never heard directly from Jane, but I didn't need to. The silence told me everything. 3 years later, it's been nearly 3 years. I still own the domain. The site still sits proudly at the top of her search results. She might have saved herself $20,000 in the short term, but I know she's lost far more in the long run. Every job application, every apartment rental, every new relationship, my site is there, telling the story she wanted to bury. She thought she left me powerless. Instead, I made her name untouchable. Forever.